Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke, and today is the 1st of April, 2025. I guess happy April Fool's Day. Although I feel like lately the idea of April Fools is it's I don't know. It's very hard to come up with something because reality and what's a joke is so it's so hard to tell the difference these days that I don't know. I don't know if anybody could really recognize an April Fool's joke at this point. But anyway, yes, it is the 1st of April. We are out of March. And good morning, Alistair. And actually, it is afternoon where you are now, so good afternoon. Yeah, it's been and Leela, good morning, and Kathleen, good morning. Yeah, it's been a doozy of a week. Yeah, and apologies for yesterday's live stream. I had literally Restream will do that. It must be on a timer that it's going to sign you out at a certain point, and it literally signed me out right in the middle. Also discovered that when I went through the Restream things that it had blocked, yes, and then that it had blocked Joanne. And I went and looked through. I'm like, why is her name on here? Because I would not block her. There's no reason for me to block her. So she's been unblocked. So hopefully that, if she's on this morning, that she will be able to come on. Because I felt very badly about that because that was definitely not intentional. But it's easy to happen. Like if you're in the middle of doing something and then all of a sudden somebody pops in at that same time, it may flip to the next person. I was worried I did that with Alex once too. I was like, ooh, did I block her by mistake? But anyway, we're all good right now, and yeah, it is nice. We had I have just been exhausted. I was telling all my students yesterday to have a nice weekend. I'm like, boy, if that wasn't projecting, I'm like, they're all probably looking at me like, it's Monday, professor. And I was like, yeah, days. I don't know what these are at this point. So yeah, and there's still a lot going on this week, but today is kind of a breather day. I do have to get the podcast out for Catonia. I have to edit that. That's the one big thing I have to do today. And also get some postings out about the classes that are coming up over the next, not really, let's see, 2 weekends. I'm trying to think, is the 19th. And hi, Alex, good to see you. Yeah, I have what is it? April 5th, I have a class. April 12th, April 19th, I'm doing Reiki Master class, and then April 26th. So all of those Saturdays, I will be having people ask about the dream workshops, tarot workshops, and also the astrology class, basic astrology. So those who are looking for a basic primer on Western astrology, we'll talk a little bit about Vedic too, but there's going to be a little bit of a primer that I'm going to be doing this Saturday from 11 to 1 Eastern time. So if anybody wants to join me for that, that will be there. And good morning. So yeah, so today is interesting. Today, the topic that I have for this is, okay, we've talked about this before. And Sudha, good morning. The Five of Swords. Okay, now we had this question before. I've had questions about that card from people in the tarot class and so on and so forth. And I know I've talked about it probably more than once, but there's an aspect of it that I was thinking about recently, and I thought that I should talk about this here. And that has to do with, it's around the subject of worthiness, okay, about being worthy of something. And this, and I'm not entirely sure, well, I don't know, I guess there was a number of things that kind of triggered this topic in my mind. So rather than get into what each one of them might have been, just maybe things I've observed from people. Probably the most comprehensive way to talk about it would be the fact that we've had Mercury and Venus retrograde. There's a lot of people re-examining relationships and re-examining, their values, or re-examining how they feel about themselves. So, so when I talk about this particular card, not only the idea of worthiness, but the idea of recognition, and where this ends up becoming, where we end up looking at this sense of competition with other people. So yeah, a lot of the times when we exist in relationship to society, now you have people who are your friends, okay? And geez, this is all coming up again. Now, when we talk about people who are our friends, there are people generally who we feel are going to accept us no matter what. They're there for you. They have your back. They support you when good things happen to you. They are, they're just there for you. If you disappear for a period of time, they understand, and they'll say, oh yeah, okay, I get, you get that other things happen in life, and that you're not necessarily the center of everybody's attention, so things can happen, and and that's totally totally fine. If we start to take a lot of that personally, there is that's where we can lead to problems, where people like, oh, you're not like you're not messaging me because because you don't like me now or something. You know what I mean? Like there's this element of if you're not doing something, then it's personal. And to me, it's like, no, it's not personal. And sometimes people who do that kind of passive aggressively, sometimes I feel like it's a little bit meant to be a little bit of a manipulation. Like, fine, don't pay attention to me. It's perfectly okay that you don't pay any attention, and it's just kind of like, and you're from Indonesia. Oh, hello, welcome. So when we talk about the Five of Swords, now obviously here's our main card here, and here's the guy who's holding the swords, and you have two other swords on the ground and two people walking away. So when we have that, I love having friends that understand when you have to disappear for a moment. Alex says, yes, yeah, exactly. And I think that is definitely a thing. I see this. I think I see it with younger people too, when they're texting and when they're doing things. It's like, I texted you and you didn't text me back in like 3 seconds. It's like, yeah, I I have other things to do, or I'm driving my car, or I'm doing something, or I can't, respond to you right away. And people know me, know that sometimes if I have a lot going on, it may take me a couple days to have to, oh, hello. So yeah, so there's definitely there's a sense here that about friendship and about things like that, that when people kind of understand that, you're in the flow of life. Because the thing is, other people in the flow of life too. Everybody else has things going on. People have jobs, they may have families, well, everybody has families, I guess, but some people have kids. Like, I don't have kids, but some people have that. There's a lot of things that people have. Alex, that type of friendship is great. Love it. Yeah. And that's kind of the way it is. Even people who, follow me here, people might email me, and sometimes it might take me a couple days to get back to you, not because I'm ignoring you or your message, but for me, I'm one of those people who likes to sit down and really like read and understand the message before I respond to it, because then when I knee-jerk respond, inevitably I get something wrong because I missed a word or I didn't pay attention to something, right? So I always want to make sure that I'm focused when I'm reading people's email, especially if they're a little bit longer ones or people are telling me about something. I want to make sure that I'm hearing what you say and respond appropriately. So sometimes, and I have also issues with switching between email accounts on phone and laptop. So yeah, so that sometimes that sometimes delays me as well. But okay, so when we're talking about this Five of Swords, I also pulled from the Cat Tarot. We have this one's this is my least favorite card, to be honest, in this deck, because you have the Sphinx cat here and you have all these other cats kind of hissing at it, like, you're not welcome in this territory kind of thing. Okay. So now getting back to the idea of worthiness. Oh, totally fair. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I mean, and that's sometimes the reason why people don't always hear back from me right away. And it's not because I'm, I guess as a business person, that's bad practice, right? You should be, somebody's messaging you, you should be getting back to them right away. But, sometimes it's just literally, I can't, I have to wait a couple minutes. So, but occasionally I do get people who get very angry at me for that. And I'm just like, well, I can't, and they're not necessarily clients. I mean, these are people who are maybe outside of that sphere, but I just like, well, oh, well, I don't know what to tell you. These things happen. Now, if you look at the energy of the Five of Swords, I always like to pull the Kabbalistic card because it also shows us the astrology of it. And in this card, you can see we are looking at Venus in Aquarius, okay? Which is an interesting thing when we think about the Five of Swords. And of course, in the esoteric decks, they call this the card of defeat. And of course, in our Osho Zen deck, we can see this as the card of comparison, trying to compare two things that are very, very different. Okay, so kind of putting all of this together and talking about this idea of worthiness, and also thinking about the Venus and Aquarius angle of things. Venus, okay, So Aquarius is what? That's 11th house energy, right? That is about the social sphere, how we interact with people. It can be about social media and social media accounts, and even things like I'm doing right now. It has to do with the people in the broader world, not just only our friends, but the people that we network with or that we encounter. It's a very social kind of energy. It's very humanitarian. It has more to do with the collective and how we proceed in the collective. So yeah, so we have this this collective energy, and we have Venus in the collective energy. Okay, now Aquarius tends to be a very detached kind of energy, right? Aquarian energy is, you know, it's friendly. Okay, it's very friendly energy, but it's detached energy. And to have Venus there, Venus brings in not only the material value of things, but things like aesthetics, what we find pleasing to look at, and that sort of thing. And this is where I think we start to see what I would often talk about, the judginess of the anima, right? And sorry, the animus. The judginess, we talk a little bit about that. When I teach my class on love mythology, I talk about the way attraction tends to work, that attraction is a soul projection, right? It is basically when you look at somebody in a certain way, or you feel an attraction to somebody, there's something you're projecting onto that person. There's something that is not them, that is more about you and what you're seeing in that other person, and that's what draws you in. It's like you're able to see the best part of yourself when you do that. So when we talk about Venus and Aquarius kind of stuff, I mean, when we're talking about that, when you're talking about it in the social sphere, this is where we get into competition and where you get into judgment. You know, where you have a group of people and people go, oh my God, look what she's wearing today. Oh, look at this. Oh, she did this. Oh, she did that. Oh my God, why did she do that over here? You know, that kind of judgy behavior, that Venus energy about what we perceive as attractive or what we perceive as aesthetically pleasing in some way or not. You know, the way in which we do that and the way in which there's that judgment in the social sphere. And that is connected to the Five of Swords. Okay. So yeah, so with this kind of Five of Swords energy, you know, there's this sense of competition. Do I belong or do I not belong? It's the kind of thing that kind of starts in middle school, right? When middle school, like typically when people are kids, I guess it could start earlier than that, but I think when people are kids, you know, you tend to more to just play with the kid next door or down the street. I don't know. Maybe people don't do that anymore. Maybe now people more have play dates and stuff like that. But I know when I was a kid, you just wander from house to house, knocking on the door, going, "Hi, can so and so come out and play?" Like, you know, that's how it was when I grew up, anyway. And so you have that energy of everybody kind of plays together. But once you get to middle school, now there's a whole different dynamic. There's the cool kids, and then there's the totally uncool ones, and then there's the bullying and the things that go between. And I've noticed that schools have been trying to do a lot, it seems, to try to lock down on that kind of stuff and not make it happen so much. But at the same time, it can get to be, you know, sometimes I think people can overdo it. There's a certain amount of that that is being an aspect of human socialization, and it's kind of weird. And I don't think mean girls start around first grade these days, is what Kathleen is saying. Yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, because kids are also growing up a lot faster. That's why I think there's a lot of developmental psych that is, I don't know. It's not, I don't think that things necessarily, the timeline for people in human development is necessarily the same. I had a student asking me last night about certain Freudian ideas and so forth, because she wanted to do her paper on that for her project for the class, and on Freud and certain ones of Freud's theories that people want to discard, and something, like I said, something that comes out of Freudian psychology is object relations theory. And object relations has been very, very useful, but the timeline of it, I think, is kind of skewed. It seems to me that more adolescent stuff is happening much earlier, and some, I don't know, and some stuff kind of people get stuck in a loop and they never get out of it either. So I don't know. There's maybe that's just a breakdown of that system. Maybe it's not even a useful system anymore. I don't know. But in any case, yeah, we have this thing about defeat, right? We have this sense of trying to be Venus. If you look at Venus as trying to be attractive for the social group, for the social order, the way in which, and conversely, when people are attracted to somebody and they see that person they're attracted to, they start to worry about how they look. You know, oh my God, do I look okay? You know, oh my God, did this person gonna look? Does this outfit make me look fat? Like, you know, whatever it is, we kind of start doing things like that, where we worry about what the other person's going to perceive us as. Okay, but the way other people perceive us is never the way we perceive ourselves, and generally we perceive ourselves with a much more critical eye than other people. Okay, with other people, we we tend to assume that everybody looks at us like we're I don't know, I don't know, like a walking lump of shit or something. Like, we always think people look at us like, oh my God, I'm just so disgusting, and you know, and we compare ourselves to other people. Oh, that person looks really good today. In the meantime, that person's sitting there going, oh my God, I absolutely hate the way I look today, and this didn't do right, and this didn't come out right, and oh, that person over there looks so much better. We do these things, and what's kind of funny about it is, yes, there are other people who are mean and judgy, and who are reflecting this kind of energy around of trying to figure out self-worth. Okay, that's what a lot of this centers around: self-worth. Do you have a strong sense of self-worth? And when you're younger and trying to build an identity, you're not going to have a sense of self-worth, just because you don't have enough life experience. You're still figuring it out. It's like when you walk into a new job or to a new situation, even if you have like a ton of experience in what you're doing, you walk in and you're a little weird the first, week or couple of weeks, however long, because you're not totally confident. You're not totally familiar. You haven't felt out the situation, the people, the dynamics. It's almost like when you look at a cat, like when it kind of goes forward and it kind of sniffs a little bit and it's very tentative before it walks into something. It's almost that kind of a thing where we are tentative about how we are doing this. So yeah, so we have this Five of Swords energy where where it was the question of acceptance and rejection. And we tend to take rejection, it tends to just add to the kind of critical mass of self-unworthiness that we can have. That we can sit there and say, well, like this is where shame comes from. This is where guilt comes from. And obviously religion can add a whole other layer to this as well, about how you should and should not be behaving, because that's part of it too. Are you playing the game? Are you playing the game the way people expect you to? And everybody has their own expectations. That's why I think part of the reason that my guru will say to people, drop your expectations, is because a lot of times we expect people to behave a certain way. To give you a very current example, when I teach classes now, when I teach people who are probably between 18 and 22 in person, one thing I notice is that a lot of them are on their phones. They're looking at other things while you're talking. And a lot of the other teachers are like, that is ridiculous. That is disrespectful. They're not paying attention. And I'm like, yes, they are. They are paying attention. They're just doing it differently. And I know this because they'll come up after class and they'll be able to tell me perfectly everything that I just said. And they'll be able to ask me intelligent questions about what I just said. So yeah, their heads down and they're like this, and you think, oh, they're not listening to me. They are. But they're listening to you, and they're so used to being in a world where they're doing so much information's coming at them. It's actually almost a little bit admirable that they can focus on many things at one time. We always like to say, oh, they're distracted and they're this and they're lazy and they're glued to their phones and da-da. But they are actually paying attention. And they prove it to me by the work that they turn in and by the questions that they ask me, that even though it may look like they're not paying attention to me, they are. And I have friends who do that too. My nephew would do that. We would be talking and he'd be sitting there on his phone, and the whole time on the phone, if I start talking about something, he's like, oh yeah, I just looked it up and this is what this says about it. Like, I mean, there's this constant interaction, but people, their first thing is like, oh, I need to go find some information about that right now while you're talking about it. It's interesting. It's an interesting dynamic to watch. But a lot of us feel that if you're going to be paying attention, you have to sit there like this. And I do have a couple students who do that, who just sit there and then, you nod your head at everything everybody says, like, hey, yeah, I get it, whether you get it or not. So, because when we talk about comparison, a lot of times we talk about other people and the rest of the world and how terrible the rest of the world is. And sure, I mean, there are terrible people in the world. Let's not kid ourselves. But the thing is, all of it kind of starts from our own sense of self-worth and our own sense of who we are and who we start comparing ourselves to. I think Venus retrograde is a time when this really comes to the fore, because we may even be comparing ourselves to previous versions of ourselves. Like here I am, I'm in my almost mid 50s, and I'm comparing myself to what I was in, when I was 20. And I'm like, well, you're not the same. Everything has changed. The dynamics has changed. The center of gravity has changed. Everything has changed. And if you're going to sit there and, say berate yourself for not looking like a 20-year-old, well, we spend a lot of energy on that kind of stuff. And for what? I mean, if there's health reasons, sure. If there's, sometimes there's just the, I don't like the way this clothes fit now kind of reason. So we all kind of do different things to adjust on that basis. But if it's because we're worried about how other people perceive us, or if we're not going to be recognized, or we're going to be ignored because we don't meet some kind of social vision of what you're supposed to be. And that's where it ties into recognition. Chiron is in Aries right now. Okay. Well, yes, comparing to previous selves. That feels so Jupiter and Gemini coded, is what Alex is saying. Yeah, exactly. Well, yes, because that's another piece of it too. And here we've got Venus in Aquarius, Jupiter and Gemini as well. Right. We have that as well. There's the idea of wanting to expand, but analyzing kind of this energy of whether or not we're going to be seen. Because I see Leo energy come up a lot as well. And Mars is not in Leo. Mars is in Cancer right now. It's going to be moving into Leo. So I think that's kind of the only major Leo placement right now. The student being able to pay attention to you and their other technology. Oh, got it, Alex. Okay, I see what you're talking about. Yeah, right. It's kind of like they're able to, yeah, they have this kind of multitasking. I don't know how deeply they absorb anything, but they do absorb stuff. So it's kind of interesting. But in any case, it's like there, when it comes to recognition, a lot of times in a world where everybody wants to be seen, in a world where you have a lot of competition on social media, when you have competition in different places. I talked a little bit about this the other day about are you interested more in making money, or are you more interested in kind of what you value and so forth? And so for me, I'm just there's this I don't know. I kind of feel like there's a there's this sense that if we're not recognized by people, that's when it's kind of the wallflower syndrome, or feeling like you're invisible, right? We talk about that kind of energy where the person who's going to be seen. And if you think about it, like, okay, if we go back to like the 70s and 80s, maybe even earlier, conception of the wallflower, the person who stands there by themselves because either they're not pretty enough, or they're socially awkward, or there's some aspect to them where they don't just easily be able to go in and mingle with people and flirt with people. This is something I've always been keenly aware of as somebody who has Venus in the 12th house. Okay. I'm not somebody, I mean, when I was younger, I was definitely not somebody who felt like I wanted to communicate. I was like, wanted to just hide away somewhere. I didn't really want to be, you kind of want to be out there and you don't at the same time. It's that thing of like, I want attention, but I don't want attention at the same time. Especially if you think you're going to get negative attention. So yeah, it takes, I think the reason, okay, in Aries season, when we're focusing on ourselves and our identity, I think it's important to think about our self-worth. And that little voice that is critical is a very, very hard one to get rid of. It's always there. It's part of what is really in shadow, right? It's part of all those things that we've come to perceive as what's wrong with us, or what's not as good as somebody else's. And obviously, as I was saying about religion, worthiness definitely plays into that as well, where people feel like I'm not worthy. What do people say before communion? Lord, I'm not worthy to receive you, but only say the word and I shall be healed, which is supposed to be a reflection of something that was said. I think I can't remember if that was the Last Supper or not, but there was something that was said where I'm not worthy to receive you. But it was one of Jesus's encounters where that comes up. I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. or you even hear that as a joke. We're not worthy. Was that oh God, what was that? Mike Myers and Dana Carvey. I don't know why I can't remember what that's called. When they did that, that particular, for some reason, like the name is completely eluding me right now. The movie, I can't remember what it was, but I think that's where that comes out of, that we're not worthy. So yeah, it's just very. I think, okay, to get a sense of self-worth, first of all, I think there's a certain amount of life experience. There has to be a certain amount of doing things and then Wayne's World. Thank you, Alex. It's like, I don't know why that would not come into my head, but it didn't. So we've got this, when we talk about worthiness, I think, first of all, is something that comes with time, that sense of feeling unworthy. Or feeling worthy of ourselves, where we go through enough life experiences and where we finally have the crisis where we go, you know what, maybe this isn't, well, it is and isn't me. You know what I mean? Like if we feel that other people are being very critical of us, you reach the moment where you go, okay, you know what, maybe I'm not, like, especially if you have somebody who's narcissistic or gaslighting or something like that in your life, you may go, you know what, maybe I'm not the crappy person that they say that I am. That's your first moment of waking up and going, you know what, maybe I'm better than what people are saying. Right? But the other thing too is to look at how much of that we internalize and how much of it allows that voice of unworthiness, that judgy voice, to get bigger and bigger and louder and louder. Because that is one thing I hear people complain about, a lot when I work with them, is just kind of like, intellectually, they're like, look, I know I shouldn't listen to this voice, but I can't help it. Like, it comes in, it appears in dreams, it appears in different places. You walk into a situation and that's an automatic feeling, like in your gut, or you feel a heaviness, or you feel something that just makes you feel like you are, that you're somehow like you should slink into a corner somewhere, or you want to go away because it's a draining situation. It doesn't make you feel full of life. It makes you feel just the opposite. And you notice that the cards lately have been talking about, you want to be fully alive. You want to be in your power, to do your thing. And when is the thing that we feel the most alive? First of all, when we're doing something that we're really passionate about. Think about it. You could look at somebody who never wants to talk, but you get on the one subject that they like, and you watch a change in face. You watch a change in, oh my God, there's this. And, people come alive when they have this. They come to life. And when they come to life like that, it just that's where you can see that the person is really in their element. You are seeing that person feeling their best about themselves. And that's the thing that actually attracts people. If we're going to talk about Venus energy and attraction comes from projecting confidence. You can look pretty much like anything. And that physical beauty ultimately is in the eye of the beholder. Everybody, has a different thing that they like, but we have this perception that, we may look at fashion models, or we may look at certain people and say, oh, well, that's how I'm supposed to look. Well, no, I mean, you're supposed to look like you. But even as we build more confidence, there's always those situations and those voices. And so it becomes important to, first of all, to learn to kind of love ourselves for who we are. And then it becomes important to learn to laugh at yourself too, and to laugh at other situations, because sometimes it's just absurd what people get hung up on or what people expect. If you really take a step back from it. And you also have to recognize the nature of competition. Oftentimes, if people are trying to make you feel bad about yourself, it's because there's something about you that either threatens them, or that they don't feel good about themselves. And I don't know, they may be seeing something in you that, or maybe there's a way that they want to be, and if they see you doing that, then they may be like, whoa, it's not really right for you to do that, because their own inner critic has told them it's not okay to do that. Maybe they, showed themselves at some time to people, or how we have things that we prefer to keep to ourselves and things that we share, that maybe somebody let themselves be more vulnerable, and then they got laughed at or criticized or bullied or something. And so then they have in their mind, oh, see, I better not ever do that. I better not show that to people. So if you show it to people, people are just kind of like, what's wrong with you? You know? And there's nothing wrong with you. You're just doing your thing. And people are going to have their opinions, whatever they are. And I guess there could be situations where that might be more difficult. If you have people who actually physically threaten you for being who you are, that's a whole other level of things. But a lot of times we will go out in public and we will judge how we have been perceived in public by that kind of unworthiness voice. Like, oh God, I effed this up. Oh, that wasn't right. Oh my God, did I do this? Oh, did I do enough of this? Do I do enough of that? You know, where were we inadequate in whatever it was that we were doing? But then if you actually went and asked the people who witnessed you, they'd be like, no, you were fine. You were great. You know, there's nothing wrong. There's no problem. But you kind of, so really the judgment really mostly is not from other people. Most of the time it's right in, it's in here. And that's why we're talking about opening up the heart space. Opening the heart space. I was watching something recently, and I'm going to talk about this on the Katonia live stream. I think there's this channel I usually will pop on YouTube, like while I'm having my lunch or whatever, or my breakfast. And there's a channel called, I think it's Funky Frog Bait. That's what it's called, like one word. And the person who does this channel has like you know, over 1 million views. I mean, it's actually a really well done fan. Alistair says, was born with Venus retrograde. Feel like you were describing my whole life. Yeah, and you know what? That's the way I've been most of my life too, as I can relate, because my when you have a hidden Venus or a retrograde Venus, yeah, you're always kind of feeling like we don't measure up, you know. That's this card, you know. I'm measuring, you know, but this is like the bamboo stalk measuring itself against the tree. It's like you're talking about two different things, you know, or two different people who are going to have different, we all have different strengths and weaknesses, right? You know, we have all things that people are going to like and not like. But, you know, but it is what it is. And we can get very, very fixated on what we don't have that we think is going to make us measure up to somebody else. But this Funky Frog Bait channel was funny. She was talking about, what was it? Okay, she was talking a little bit about the way, she was looking at witch talk, and about the way they interpret the idea of being more feminine or embracing one's dark feminine. And again, that's a subject I'm mainly going to save for tomorrow afternoon's live stream, because I think it's an interesting one. And that's part of the reason when I say to people, when I'm talking about the feminine, I stress it's the archetypal feminine, not the social patriarchal construct of what femininity is supposed to be, which is more of what I call the Virgin Mary model. It's the woman who's quiet, obedient, and submissive. Like passivity is interpreted as submission, as not putting yourself out there, as not putting, you know, men will find you too aggressive if you put your energy out there. Like that was what she was complaining about. She's like, what is this BS that you're peddling to people, is kind of what you know, what at least that part of the video was kind of talking about. And yeah, it's not, to express one's feminine energy just simply means to be compassionate to other people, to be understanding, to be empathetic, to be forgiving, because we recognize that it basically, a lot of times it just, that opening up is not about, that I better, you know, if that person says things about me, I should just be quiet and sit over here. No, it's not about that. Those things that people say to you are about them. Okay, that's where they feel inadequate. If somebody says to you, oh yeah, you know, you could do this, or you could be more of this, or you could be more of that, you know, that's their inadequacy. With you, it's a matter of being able to say, well, this is who I am, and if you don't like it, then, you know, you don't have to engage with me. It's kind of the way I feel about Katonia. People will say, oh, well, you could make your podcast this, you could, I think they were saying you could use AI and get all of this stuff taken out of, you know, so everything sounds perfect. I'm like, yeah, but AI will probably replace half of my words too. So, you know, there's this idea of that we have to put on this face that is always perfect, this mask of perfection all the time. And if the mask slips at all, then people are going to see who we really are. And it's almost like when we're exposed, you know, vulnerability is about being exposed. But what you're exposing is not something terrible. That's the problem. We think that what we're exposing and that people are going to hate, and they're going to go, oh, I don't, you know, you're not interesting to me now. Chiron and Aries, whatever you've done, I'm not paying attention to it. It's ignored, right? That's the Chiron in Aries wound. It says that whatever I do, it's not enough for people. If you ever lived with an alcoholic, that is something that will happen, where they will, constantly. That is a person who their need for with their need for alcohol actually has more to do with their kind of inability to kind of deal with life as it is. It's like there's like this like raw sensitivity, and they kind of expect other people to carry them through life, and that's the way that it is. And so if you have ever been married, I was married to somebody like that, and being married to somebody like that, it was always like, well, you're supposed to work and manage the house and do everything, and you have to carry me because I'm somebody who needs to be carried. I'm very delicate. And I'm like, yeah, F you, like get a backbone, because that's the thing. Sometimes there's this perception that if you are strong in yourself, that you are, and that can also make you start to doubt yourself. You start saying, well, should I not put myself out there? And it's different from being unworthy. It's like people see you as being too prideful or something, but expressing who you are is not being prideful. If you need to do that and say, well, I'm awesome and you suck. Like if we're going to be pulling the comparison game all the time, then that's operating more out of a place. You're still operating from that same place. You're playing that same game. And there's really no way to play that game and win it. There's no way to play that game and win it. So the best thing to do is to just recognize that, yeah, there's things about you that people are going to perceive as great. There's things people are going to perceive about you as not great. And, whatever. And the people who are meant to be in your orbit will gravitate into your orbit. It's, we don't have to try to force it or control it. It's not, we kind of start seeing our relationships, not only our intimate relationships, but our friendships as like a back and forth. It becomes like a conquest. Who's going to be better than the other? There's one thing that was said on that channel, like one of the videos that this person was showing from TikTok, was this woman, the idea that, well, if you're a woman who's this way, then men see you as like another man, and they feel like they have to compete with you, which is interesting actually, because I have noticed that, like, asserting who I am, people are like trying to, it's almost like I have found that in relationships where people are kind of like, oh, well, yeah, you do this, but I do this thing and I think it's better. I've had that kind of stuff, and I'm just like, if you're going to play that game, go away. I don't have time for that. Not because my feeling is just, if you're with somebody, you support them, you support what they do. There's other people who do what I do who are probably our competition, but I'm like, look, there's some aspect of what they do that other people might like better, and that's just how it is. There's other things that I do that they may prefer in working with me, and that's okay too. You have to come to a certain acceptance of things as they are. When we do this, we tend to feel that that we're supposed to, that somehow what we are is not enough. Okay. That's what that voice does. It's always driving us to do something more. And we like to call that ambition. We like to call that's that urge towards perfection. And Kathleen says, bring it on. Yep. There's this perfectionism that we have, but I think it takes a long time. So when you tell this to younger people, they may listen to what you're saying, but they tend to translate it in a different way. Like, oh, okay, well, because they're still trying to make their way in the world. They're still trying to establish what their 10th house public identity is. And I don't know, I guess my demographic for this channel and everything tends to be people who are like between 30 and 60, roughly. I mean, there could be people older or younger. That does happen. But people who have kind of had some life experience, maybe have had a career or had a job or have a strong sense, maybe are at a point now where they're transitioning into saying, yeah, you know what, maybe I did that. Maybe now I want to do this. But when people are younger, it's interesting because there's that identity formation. So the idea of finding your niche, of finding where you're going to be accepted, what club are you going to be allowed to join, right? How worthy are you? But we have to remember that as part of the developmental process, that at the end of the day, when we get older, I think when we have these knee-jerk reactions to situations, it's almost like we're putting ourselves in the shoes of the younger us. And that person is gone. That situation's gone. That stage of life is gone. You're not trying to figure out and find your niche at this point. Now you're at a point where it's like, okay, I've done all that, and now I am who I am, and it's time to. I think that's why people, as they get into their 30s and so forth and older, start getting to a point where they want to say, no, you know what, I'm ready to be who I am. And I love how they always call it like a midlife crisis. And they talk about it in a way of almost like, gee, now I'm going to dump the marriage and buy the expensive car. Like people tend to look at it that way, as though they've missed out on something. But it's really more about, no, it's just you're doing different things at different times of your life. And we've never really come into a real acceptance of how that is. And we tend to judge ourselves continually based on childhood. I guess this is why when we talk about psychotherapy and so forth, one of the values of going back to childhood is where did you start this story? Where did you get this idea that this was bad, wrong, imperfect, flawed, makes you unworthy, out of the loop? What is it? And that's where we start getting all of these things about self-improvement too. As I've always said, I've always pointed people to Alan Watts's lecture, and I think I did post to my stories. I might have to share it again if people didn't see it. But the long form, I know there was a short one too, but there's a very long one where Alan Watts talks about, why the urge to improve yourself. Because whatever we think, he says, if you're not focusing from that point of awareness, and probably nobody is, it gets back to the whole who's watching the watcher. Like when you meditate and you watch your thoughts, well, who's watching those thoughts, right? Who's watching the watcher? And if you don't really know, if your mind doesn't really know or is limited in what it can know, then how do you know what's better for you? That's kind of the point of it. How do you know what's better? It's probably better to just listen to your authentic, to try to quiet a lot of that noise and that judgment and say, okay, wait, where do I really want to be? And allow that to be your guide. Okay, so let's look at our reading for today. We're down the last 3 minutes here. Our center card is guilt. Yeah, 8 of Swords. This is exactly it. This is, if we were looking at the 5 of Swords, but we've also got the 8 here. This idea of, everything that I've done wrong, everything I should be ashamed of, everything that I'm not that I should be, right? Guilt. And like I said, if you belong to certain religious systems, that may just add a whole other layer of it. The Alan Watts video is really great in offering perspective. I listened to the long form one. Good. Okay, good. Yes, because I remember you had shared with me the short form one. I was like, oh, there's a longer one. Yeah, he gets into the whole thing of it. And you just start to realize that, without trying to sound cliche, you're kind of perfect as you are. In terms of, but also, do you want to be perfect? Because to be perfect is to be finished. Like I said, perfectory means to finish. We're not ever finished. We're always a work in progress, and we're always going to change. Something that we had felt strongly about, or it was important to us at one time, may not be at another time in life, and that's okay. This is why you want to flow with change and not insist on kind of going back to these repeated scripts. Yeah, and the inner feeling of which we're unaware. This is the Moon card, but they're calling it past lives. Now, this can have to do with past lives, literally, as if you believe in such things, which again, I realize not everybody does think of the past life thing, but I tend to believe in past lives. But at the same time, even if you don't, you can just be looking back to your past, right? These are all the things that, that all the stuff that your soul has accumulated that usually is hidden from us, that still plays out in our day-to-day lives, and we just don't even know it. And it doesn't have to be a past life. It can be a childhood thing too, that just plays out, and how do you, and you may be, and some of it, if we are talking about past lives, sometimes some of it can be deeply traumatic from another perspective, that maybe it's like your consciousness doesn't want to reveal it. It's almost like if you have a very traumatic event and somehow you black it out, you can't remember anything about it. Sometimes that's kind of a thing, like a cloud is put over it just to kind of protect you from the intensity of the experience. So I don't know, but these things still find a way to kind of creep through in other situations, and they get projected outwards, right? The external feeling of which we're aware, here's our flowering card, a very pretty flowering card here. Flowering. You are, you need to flower into the person who you are, right? You have something to offer. You had something to offer the world. Even if you think, oh, I'm not as good as this one or that one, who cares? I mean, you're you and you're doing your thing. And there's, as my friend JR always says, there's an ask for every seat. There's something that there's always somebody who's going to be interested in what you're doing. It's a big world out there. So yeah, what's our advice card? Harmony, 10 of Cups, harmonizing with the world around us, rather than fighting with the people around us, because they're not different from what they are. There's a certain amount of acceptance. Now, mind you, when I say that, I'm not saying that you should accept that, abusive behavior or whatever. You have a right to your boundaries. You have a right to go, yeah, okay, dude, and walk away and do your own thing. You have a right, you have a right to set whatever boundaries you want. Gorgeous card, flowering. Yes, I know. I seem to remember this one was one of your favorites in this deck, and that's a Queen of Pentacles card. And yeah, you're flowering into who you are. So this is about trying to create harmony with the world by not trying to be, again, acceptance of the fact that this is the way the world operates. And I think it goes back to the rune of Nauthiz, which is like, don't take the world personally. It's like a lot of times what's going on is other people figuring their own stuff, and you are the mirror that's in front of them. And so they're talking to you, but they're not really talking to you. And people who engage in certain kinds of behaviors, you don't want people to tell you that you're lesser than who you are. You don't want people to tell you that you are, to try to define who you are. But you have to recognize that you may be defining yourself in terms of how you look at other people. What they're reflecting back at you at the same time. It's like we live in this hall of mirrors. It's kind of crazy. And our outcome card is clinging to the past. Okay, this is the 5 of Cups. So what this is about, this shows a person like her whole head is like tied up in this kind of big box, and it's kind of like, take that box and just leave it at the curb, because this does have to do with the past and what we feel we've lost in the past, where we feel we failed, where we feel we needed to be ashamed, what we were embarrassed about, where we felt we did not meet social approval in some way. It's like, leave it at the curb. Just leave it at the curb. Because the reality is this. The reality is this. There's a card in the fairy deck, I think it's the Sylvanus card, that says, if you look to what people think of you, you'll be surprised to know that people have a better opinion of you than you think they do, or a better opinion of you. So, yeah. And and then if you sit there and start talking negatively about yourself, they look at you and they're like, oh, okay. Like, they don't get it, because that's not what they see when they look at you, right? And the people who don't like you, well, again, that's a projection point for, that person's own insecurities or that person's own things. So, yeah, it's not that we shouldn't, if you are living in your authentic self, you will defend that authentic self. You will stand up for yourself. And at the same time, when other people tie you grandstanding, just don't be bothered by it, and don't feel that somehow you're not, you can look and admire other people's work, but don't feel that like somehow you're lesser because you're not doing the same work as them. Okay. I mean, yes, there's a lot of people whose work I admire, and I think, wow, this is great, this person's doing. And you always want to be encouraging, but there'll be people who say, oh, well, I don't measure up because of X and Y. And it's like, well, if that's something you want to do, you can see, like, for example, if people would say to me, oh, well, you know so much stuff. I'm like, well, yeah, I've been spending the last 50 years reading books. I read a lot of stuff, and I've studied a lot of stuff because that's what I'm interested in doing. So, it's like, people can read stuff too. Grandstanding. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. When people grandstand, oftentimes that can be an expression of either frustration or insecurity. So yeah, it's an interesting topic to talk about. But thinking about self-worth, and this is probably in Aries season a good thing to look at. Needed to say thank you so much. You guys are so welcome. Yeah, I'm over time again, so I'm going to go, but I will be back tomorrow morning, and I will also be live streaming on Katonia probably at 3 tomorrow. So yeah, wish me luck in catching up today, but and just also having some time to relax. So all of you have a great